Chapter 8 Oscar Attacks. Oscar and Chris tiptoed over to the dining room. The man on guard must be standing below this window, Oscar whispered to the porter. Now you creep round the house from the other side, and wait by the corner, like I said. As soon as this man has run away, whistle twice. Then we'll grab the other one. All clear. Right, said the porter. I stand over there by the corner, and when the man down here runs away, I whistle twice, and you come and help me. Then out he went. Oscar sat and waited up on the window-sill. Suddenly he jumped with fright. Some chimes rang out loudly through the quiet night from the direction of the church tower. 1, 2, 3, the clock struck 12. It was midnight. Chris must be over at the corner by now, thought Oscar. So here goes. Oscar jumped down off the sill and landed right on top of the man, who had been standing underneath the window without a suspicion in the world. The man cried out in fright. Oscar very nearly slid off, but he held on tightly with all four paws and said in a deep voice, "Woo, a ghost." Then he bit the man's left ear, jumped to the ground, and hid quickly behind some bushes. The man stood stock still with terror for a few moments. Then he tore out into the road as if demons were after him. Let's hope that's got rid of him, thought Oscar. Now for the second one. He could see the ladder leaning up against the hotel wall. The visitors must be still asleep, for there was not a sound to be heard. The burglar was prowling silently through the rooms, looking for things to steal from the rich man and the lady and the children. Suddenly a whistle shrilled through the night, then another one. Well done, Chris thought Oscar, and kept his eyes fixed on the window. Nothing moved. Hadn't the burglar heard the whistle, or was he going to slip out of the hotel some other way? There, a man's head appeared at the window. There he was. The burglar looked all round and climbed swiftly out on to the ladder. He was carrying a big fat sack over his shoulder. He had not come down very far when the porter jumped out from behind the corner, seized the ladder, and tipped it over. The burglar came crashing down. Chris threw himself on top of him in a flash, and held his head down on the ground. Oscar watched with satisfaction. That had worked wonderfully. He ran over to the two of them, and not a moment too soon. The burglar was just groping in his pocket and pulling out the pistol. Oscar snapped at his hand and bit it hard. "Ow, ow," cried the man, and dropped the pistol. Before he could reach out for it again, Oscar picked it up and hid it under a bush. "There, now, at any rate, you can't shoot anyone, you rascal," said the Dachshund. "Now, we just wait for the police." With that, he lay down on the ground beside Chris. With a sudden jerk, the burglar tore himself loose and leapt upon Chris. Both men went tumbling over each other until Oscar was quite frightened. They hit out with their fists, each one trying to get the other down, or to seize him round the neck. At last, Chris managed to fling the burglar to the ground. "You won't get away now, you villain," he panted, holding him firmly by the legs. "Let me go, or you'll be sorry," snarled the burglar. To Oscar's great alarm, he saw a long knife glinting in the burglar's hand. He leapt upon the burglar from behind, and gripped his neck firmly between his teeth, so that he had to let the knife fall and could not move. Chris sprang to his feet. "Hands up, and not another squeak from you," he cried, "or I'll have to hit you over the head with this." The burglar sat on the ground and put his hands both up. Try as he might, he could not shake the Dachshund off his neck. Oscar almost had to let go for laughing when he saw what the porter was holding up as a cudgel. It was an old bicycle pump, and he was waving it fiercely about under the frightened burglar's nose. Oscar did not laugh for long. A black figure suddenly emerged from the darkness, hit Chris over the head from behind, and sent him flying to the ground. Then he fell on Oscar, seized him round the neck, and squeezed his throat until he could scarcely breathe, and could not make a sound. Then Oscar realized who it was. It must be the second burglar, the one whose head he had landed on. His terror had quickly worn off, and now he had come back to help his accomplice, and escape with the stolen things. "Let me go," Oscar tried to shout. The man only squeezed his throat harder and harder. Oscar looked round in vain for help. Chris was lying on the ground without moving. Maybe he was dead already. The other burglar hurried over to the bulging sack, lying on the ground by the fallen ladder. "Wring his neck for him, the nasty little beast," he hissed, "and then get away before someone comes." "Now I'm for it," thought Oscar. The man took hold of his head, so as to twist his neck round. With his last scrap of strength, Oscar tried to snap at his hand, but he could no longer move. His legs hung down as if dead. Wait! Hadn't somebody shouted out? The burglar dropped Oscar, ready to run away. Then the shout came again, quite loud and clear this time. "Stop! Stay where you are!" Oscar saw a man standing there with a big rubber truncheon in one hand and a torch in the other. Were still more burglars arriving? Then Oscar saw that the newcomer was not a burglar, it was the policeman. The two burglars stood still, uncertain what to do. "We're saved," cried Oscar, jumping to his feet and shaking himself. Chris sat up again too, rubbing his head. "Whatever's happening?" he asked with a groan. "The policeman has come," Oscar told him. "We're saved." Suddenly a shiver of fright ran through him. There were two of the burglars, and only one policeman. At any moment they might pick up the knife and attack again. Oscar rushed over to the bushes, found the burglar's pistol, and brought it over to Chris. When the burglars saw the pistol in Chris's hand, they meekly raised their hands above their heads. "Well, Chris, how do you feel?" asked the policeman. "Can we get these two lads to bed?" "They ought to be thrown straight in the river," grumbled Chris, feeling the bump on his head. "That fellow almost killed me." The policeman had already put handcuffs on one of the burglars, and now it was the other's turn. "There, now they can't get very far," said the policeman. Chris picked up the sack and the burglar's pistol. Oscar took the knife, and together they carried it all into the hotel. Then they went with the burglars and the policeman to the prison. "That's another good job done," said the policeman. "Many thanks for your help. I'll be round at the hotel again tomorrow morning." Oscar and Chris went back to the hotel, hot and weary, but content. "How the lady and gentleman will stare tomorrow when we give them back their stolen things," Oscar said. "They'll be very surprised that they didn't wake up." He started off for the kennel again, to go back to sleep until morning. "No, you're not going back to the kennel tonight," said Chris. "You can sleep on the rug by my bed. You deserve it. I've never met such a good watchdog in my life." They were soon asleep, and did not wake again until somebody came and banged loudly at their door. Chris jumped out of bed and was still putting on his trousers when the rich gentleman burst into the room in his dressing gown. "Porter, porter," he cried, "my suit is gone. All my money's gone. Fetch the police at once." There was no need to fetch the police, for the sergeant had already arrived to write his report on the burglary. In a few seconds, half the hotel had gathered in the porter's room. The hotel manager and his family, the cook, the chambermaid, the laundry woman, and the gentleman whose room had been burgled, with his wife and children, and many other visitors besides. All of them looked at the sack which was lying on the floor in the middle of the room. This was the sack in which the burglar had put everything he had laid his hands on. Beside the sack sat Oscar, and he had to tell them all how he had discovered the burglars and had captured them with the help of Chris and the policeman. "You are perfectly wonderful," said the hotel manager, "but why didn't you wake us up, or at least wait until the police came? Things could have gone very badly for you." "Oh, I knew I could manage a couple of burglars all right," said Oscar. "If we had woken you, they might have got away, or might even have started shooting people." At these words the children looked in some alarm at the burglar's sharp knife and pistol, which were now lying beside the sack. "Now, let's have a look and see what the burglar collected," said the policeman, opening the sack. "Come along, you do the unpacking," he said to the little boy. "They will all be your things." The boy put his hand in the sack and took out one thing after another, laying them all out on the table. Oscar could hardly believe his eyes when he saw how many things came out of the burglar's sack: a coat and trousers, a new hat, a pair of shoes, 3 shirts, then came the father's wallet, and a yellow envelope full of banknotes, the father's and mother's purses, a camera, 2 clocks, the mother's necklaces and bracelets, the father's shaving things. Suddenly the boy turned quite pale with indignation. What, was he going to take this too? "Oh, the beast!" he cried, pulling a small telescope out of the sack. He had been given it for Christmas, and he couldn't wait to try it out by looking down on the whole world from the mountain heights. "He didn't get anything of mine," said the little girl proudly. Then the policeman picked up the sack by the bottom corners and gave it a good shake. "Oh, my handbag! Oh, the horrid man!" the little girl cried, pouncing on a little red bag which had fallen out last of all. "And I've one more thing here," said the policeman, holding out a key ring. "I found the key of the car in his trouser pocket. They meant to drive off in the dark with all the stolen things in your car." "Have you got any more surprises like this?" the gentleman asked. If there's always so much excitement here in Upchurch, we shall have to come here every year. But now it's time for breakfast. Chris and the policeman sergeant must come and have it with us, and Oscar too, of course. So Oscar sat with the grand family, the porter and the policeman, in the dining room, at a table quite near the window he had jumped down from during the night, to land on the head of the man on guard. In between fried eggs and bread and honey, he told the story of his night's adventures all over again. "Oscar, I've quite taken to you," said the rich gentleman. "You must come and live with us. I think you'll find you will be very happy." "No, sir," replied the policeman. "I want to keep Oscar myself. He will make the best police dog in the whole country. I have never met such a clever dog before." Oscar soon put a stop to the argument. "I can't belong to either of you," he said. "I've got a young master called Willie. He'll be waiting for me now, and feeling very miserable at my being away for so long." Then he told the sad story of the collar, and how he hoped to hear some good news today from Lisa the cow up in the mountain pastures. "You're looking for a collar," cried the gentleman. "That isn't so valuable that you need to go halfway round the world for it. I'll be delighted to buy you a new collar, the best one you can find." Oscar would not hear it. "There isn't another collar anywhere in the world like the one my master Willie gave me," he said. "I've got to get the same collar back, or my master won't be at all pleased with me. He spent all his savings on it." "You can't possibly go all that way," the lady broke in. "You lost your bandage in the night, and your tail can't be quite better again." "Oh yes, it's much better," replied Oscar. "I think Mr. Oatmeal the vet must have put some magic ointment on it for me yesterday." With that he jumped down from his chair. "I hope you all enjoy your holidays very much," he said. "And now, Chris, please will you show me the way to Fir Tree Alp?" Chapter 9. Storm on the Mountain. Oscar set out with Chris. "You've a long way to go before you get to the pastures," said Chris. "You had better have your tail bandaged up again." They went to see Mr. Oatmeal, the vet, once more. "Have you been running about so much that you lost your bandage?" asked the vet. "Didn't I say you were to have a day's complete rest?" "I meant to," said Oscar, "but during the night a burglar climbed into the hotel, and I had to capture him." He told the vet all that had happened. Mr. Oatmeal quite forgot to shut his mouth in his amazement. "Well, whoever heard of a dachshund doing such a thing as that?" he cried. "If you can catch a thief, then you are sure to find your collar again soon." He did up the dachshund's bandage even more firmly than before. "Now I can go on with my travels," said Oscar. He crossed the village with Chris and went out through the fields to a big tree where two paths met. "There, that is the path you must follow," said Chris. "You can't go wrong. By noon, when the sun is straight overhead, you will be at Fir Tree Alp." Oscar sniffed at the ground. "Yes, I can still smell that cows have been along here," he said. "I shan't lose the way now. Thank you very much, Chris, and goodbye." "Goodbye, Oscar. Lots of luck," called Chris, as he waved after the dachshund. Now Oscar was all alone, but that did not worry him. If everything has gone well up till now, then it will go on going well, he thought. He trotted happily up into the mountains. On both sides of the path stretched green fields. Bees and butterflies were flying from one flower to the next, gathering honey. After a while, Oscar stopped to have a little rest. Far below him were the houses of Upchurch, with the tall, pointed church spire rising above the red roofs. Even the big church clock could still be seen. On and on he went, through a dark fir wood, then up the sunny grassy hillsides again. A flock of sheep was standing by a little stream. They stared in astonishment at the Dachshund with his bandaged tail trotting up the mountain path, all on his own. "Where are you going?" they bleated. "Stop and tell us where you come from." "I'm going to Fir Tree Alp," Oscar told them in reply. "I'm in a hurry. Perhaps I can tell you a bit about it on my way back." He trotted on. Up and up he went, and the path grew rougher and rougher. There were even big rocks lying in the fields on either side. He went through another wood, and then the path led up a long slope, covered with nothing but stones and pebbles. "How very odd," thought Oscar. "The cows have enough to eat in the fields at home. Why do they climb all the way up here into the mountains, where there is nothing but stones? Or have I lost my way, I wonder?" He thought he would go on as far as the end of this stony slope. There the path turned a corner, and he would probably be able to see far up the mountain once he was round it. Then he suddenly heard a voice shout, "Hello, little Dachshund, what are you doing here?" Oscar jumped and spun round. By the side of the path, a man was sitting and smoking a pipe. He had been beside him a huge basket, with straps for carrying it on his back. "Good morning," said Oscar. "You did give me a fright. I thought I was all alone up here." "You know I thought exactly the same," answered the man with a laugh. "But tell me, where are you actually going?" "Up to Fir Tree Alp," said Oscar. "Is this the right way? And is there still far to go?" "It's the right way, all right," replied the man, "but we are not halfway there yet. If we keep up a good pace, we can be up there by lunchtime. Have a little rest now, and tell me what you want at Fir Tree Alp." "I'm looking for a cow," answered Oscar. "She is called Lisa, and she comes from the same place as me. I've got something to ask her." "Here's a Dachshund going up to the Alps to ask a cow something," laughed the man. "Who ever heard of such a thing before? What is this important thing you must ask Lisa?" Then Oscar told the friendly man the whole story of the collar that he had lost and must find again. "That is a problem for you," said the man. "Lisa may well be able to help. Lots of people say cows are silly, but anyone who knows them knows better." "What are you going to do at Fir Tree Alp?" asked Oscar. "I'm the herdsman up there," he said. "I'm called Alex. I went down to the village yesterday to fetch a few things. I had to bring some salt up for the cows, too. That's what makes my basket so heavy." The herdsman stood up and hoisted the basket onto his back. "There, now, we must be on our way," he said. They set out again together. On they went up the mountain, round one bend after another. Then Oscar stopped. "Wait a minute," he panted. "I'm awfully tired. I must just get my breath back." "I can tell you come from a town," said Alex. "You're not used to climbing mountains. If you're good and sit still, I'll carry you a little way in my basket." Oscar did not need to be asked twice. Alex leaned back towards the slope of the hillside, and the Dachshund hopped up onto his basket. Oscar had fallen fast asleep before. Alex put the basket down, again saying, "Well, there we are for now." The Dachshund blinked at him with sleepy eyes. "Is this fir tree out?" he asked, giving himself a shake. "No," said Alex. "The pastures are over on the other side of this ravine, up above that steep rock face, but there's an overhead railway here." "Oh, lovely, an overhead railway!" cried Oscar. "Then we can ride up to the pastures on it." "No, it's not an overhead railway for people," said the herdsman. "We only use this as a cable lift to pull up heavy loads, since the worst bit of the path comes now. First it dips down into the ravine, and then it's very steep up the rock face the other side. That is why we made this little overhead railway. We use it to bring the cheese and butter down from the pastures, too, as far as here. We have to carry it all on down to the village on our backs, but the rest of the way is not so bad." The herdsman loaded his basket into a wooden box, which hung down from a long wire cable. He began slowly turning the handle of a winch, and the box rose smoothly from the ground. "Oh, Alex, let me go too," cried Oscar. "I would so like a ride on an overhead railway. I'm not very heavy, am I?" The herdsman stopped turning. "That wouldn't do," he said. "You might fall out and go hurtling right down into the deep ravine. You would be killed." "I won't fall out," pleaded Oscar. "I'm so dreadfully tired, and my tail is hurting again. It will be much easier for you too, if I go on the overhead railway, than if you have to carry me up to the pastures." Alex glanced up at the sky with a worried look on his face. "Look at those black clouds," he said. "There's a storm coming up. We must hurry." "All right, then get in if you like, but don't do anything silly, and hold on tight, and don't get out before the box stops right at the top. That's Fir Tree Alp up there. I'll follow straight after on foot." "Thank you, Alex," said Oscar, jumping happily into the box and lying down beside the basket. The herdsman began turning the winch again, and Oscar rose slowly into the air. "This is wonderful," he cried. "I'm flying like a bird." Indeed, Oscar was hovering high over the ravine, almost like a bird. Two sides of the box were open, and Oscar could see all round for a long way. The village down in the valley was well out of sight by now, but there below stood Alex, turning the big wheel, and the more he went on turning, the smaller he got, and the farther Oscar could see across country. "I'd like to have a ride like this every single day," thought Oscar. When he looked out on the other side, however, he suddenly felt anxious and afraid. Black clouds were covering the sky. The sun had disappeared. The wind was beginning to rock the box about. Oscar nearly fell out with fright as a bright flash of lightning shot through the ravine, and the next moment there followed a mighty clap of thunder. Heavy drops of rain began falling from the sky. Then all at once the overhead railway stopped moving. "What's gone wrong?" wondered Oscar. "I can't stay hanging here in the middle of nothing." Oscar looked down. There was no sign of the herdsman. He must have taken shelter so that he wouldn't get soaked through, thought Oscar. As soon as the thunderstorm is over, he will come back and go on turning until I get up to the pastures. The thunderstorm showed no sign of stopping for a long time yet. The great clouds had made it quite dark. Lightning flashed, and the thunder rolled so fiercely that the rocks shook. Harder and harder fell the rain, and then a strong wind sprang up. The box swung to and fro, and no sooner did it hang down still from the cable again, that a new gust of wind would come and fling it about wildly. "Oh, the basket!" cried Oscar suddenly. The cable box was rocking so hard that the herdsman's basket had begun to slip. Already one end of it was hanging out over the edge. Oscar hurried over to the other side and tried to pull the basket back in again. Then a fresh gust of wind howled past. The cable box swung to and fro like a bell, and the basket began sliding and sliding again until it overbalanced and fell into the depths below. Oscar very nearly fell out of the box too, but at the last moment he managed to hold on. By now he was feeling terribly ill from all the rocking about. He could no longer keep on his feet. He did not dare to lie down on the bottom either, for at each gust of wind he rolled to and fro in the box, and nearly fell out into the ravine. "Oh, Willie, Willie," he cried, "can't you do anything to help?" But only a weak echo came from the mountain walls. "Help! Help!" Oscar went on rocking helplessly about in the air, expecting each moment to be his last. At last the lightning and thunder grew less, the rain stopped, and the box hung still again from the cable. The sun appeared between two clouds. "Thank goodness the storm is over," sighed Oscar, taking new hope. "Now Alex must come straight back." Suddenly he heard the rush of wings above, and a big shadow flew over him. Was this a big bird coming to rescue him from the overhead railway? "Help! Please do help!" Oscar shouted as loud as he could. The rushing sound came closer, and Oscar nearly jumped over the side into the ravine with fright. A gigantic bird with a fearsome hooked beak flew straight down and perched beside him on the box. Chapter 10. Oscar is Captured. The enormous bird sat there on the overhead railway box and glared at Oscar with his fierce eyes. "Good morning," stammered Oscar. "You must be an eagle. Have you come to fetch me down from here?" "I am an eagle," said the bird, "and I'm the strongest and bravest eagle in all these mountains." "A real eagle?" Oscar asked shyly. "I've never seen one before. Do you eat lambs? And are there lambs up here too, then?" "Don't try to be funny," hissed the eagle. "I get what I need all right, and now I've got you. My little ones will no doubt like the taste of you." "The taste of me!" cried Oscar in alarm. "I'm not something to eat. Please do help me get away from here." "I'll tell you the whole story." The eagle's only reply was to seize him in his claws and fly away with him. "Ow, ow, let me go," cried Oscar, and he wriggled and kicked for all he was worth. It was no use. The eagle only held him more firmly than ever. Oscar let his legs hang limply down and shut his eyes. "Oh, why didn't I take the herdsman's advice and walk?" he groaned. "What will become of me now?" When he next opened his eyes, he saw 3 big huts far below, with a herd of cows grazing in the green meadows all around. That must be Fir Tree Alp. There below were the cows in whose cattle truck he had hidden, and there below must be Lisa too. "Lisa, Lisa, help!" he cried. "I'm up here. The eagle's going to eat me." But Lisa was a long way away, and could not hear him. Even if she had heard him, how could she have helped? On and on flew the eagle. They rose higher and higher into the air. Soon Oscar could see nothing but gray mountains all around. Then the eagle flew straight at a rocky precipice. "Where is he going now?" wondered Oscar. "He can't fly through the mountain. Surely he isn't going to smash me against the side of the rock." Suddenly he heard a croaking and cheeping. The eagle screamed a greeting. There, not far ahead of them, was a rock ledge sticking out from the precipice, almost like a small balcony. On the ledge was a huge nest made of twigs and bits of grass, and in the nest 3 birds were sitting, with their big beaks gaping open. These must be the young eagles. "What have you got? What have you brought us?" they shrieked. The eagle dropped the dachshund in the middle of the shrieking young birds and perched on the edge of the nest. "There's something for you, something very special," said the eagle. "I think you will like the taste of it." "What is it? What's it supposed to be?" cried all the young ones. "I don't know," said the eagle. "I've never seen such a funny thing before either. But it's sure to be all right to eat." "It's not a funny thing, and I'm not all right to eat," cried Oscar. "I'm a dachshund, and I have a master in the town. If you do anything to me, he'll come and shoot you all dead." "What's the impudent creature saying?" cried the big eagle. "Shoot us all dead? Will he? I'll show him what for." He came up to Oscar, ready to make an end of him with his great sharp beak. Just in time the young ones shouted, "Don't kill him. Let him stay alive. He does look so funny. We want to play with him. It's so boring here in the nest." "He's an impudent creature," growled the big bird, "and we have little enough room in the nest as it is. Who knows, he might suddenly run away." "Where can he run to?" said the young ones. "No one can run very far away here. That's what makes it so boring, because we haven't learned to fly yet." "That's all very well," said the first bird, "but what do you think you are going to eat? I haven't caught anything else. All the animals hid away in that thunderstorm. You'll just have to go hungry until your mother brings you something." The young ones were silent for a moment. Then they cried, "Yes, we'd rather stay hungry until Mama comes." Oscar sighed with relief. He might yet get away alive. "Oh, please do take me down to the pastures," he pleaded. "My master would be as sad as anything if I never came home again. I'm so little and thin, you wouldn't even get a good meal out of me." "Now you stop making such a song and dance," scolded the big bird. "Otherwise we'll make short work of you." Oscar kept quiet and peered over the edge of the precipice. He must find some way of making the eagle carry him down from this fearsome place. How could he ever persuade him? He would have to think hard. The young birds did not leave him much time to work anything out. "What did you say you were? A dachshund, was it?" one of them asked. "What's a dachshund? What do you do all day?" "A dachshund is a dog," Didn't you know that?" explained Oscar. "And we are the cleverest of all dogs." "The cleverest dogs," said a young eaglet. "I don't believe that. If you had been one of the cleverest dogs, my father wouldn't have caught you." For a moment Oscar didn't know what to answer. Then he said, "Even the cleverest person does something foolish some time in his life." Then he told the young eaglets how he had been too tired and weary to walk up to the pastures, and how their father had taken him from the overhead railway. "A good thing he did too," cried an eaglet, "or you wouldn't have come here, and we should be awfully bored now." "What did you want up in the pastures?" asked another. "Were you going to help look after the cows?" "No," said Oscar. "Looking after cows is not our job. That is done by the sheep dogs and special herd dogs. I was going to look for my collar. I've lost my beautiful collar." "What's a collar?" asked one of the eaglets. "It's a strap that you wear round your neck to look nice," Oscar told him. "What do you want a strap round your neck for?" asked another. "You've got such a nice strap round your tail already." Oscar would have liked to tell the young birds all about how he had got bandaged his tail, but how could they ever understand what a hotel and a lift were? They had never seen anything except their nest, and the mountains and snowy peaks, and the sky above them. "Well, there are so many things in the world, awfully funny things," said Oscar. "If you take me down to the pastures, then I'll be able to show you all sorts of things. You can come to Upchurch with me. That's where I caught a burglar last night. Then we can go in a railway train. You don't need to do any walking or flying, but you get from one place to another very fast. Then you could come with me to Seven Towers. That's where my master Willie lives. We'll go to school there together. The children will be thrilled if an eagle, or even a whole eagle family, comes to see them. It will make it much less boring for them too, I'm sure." Oscar stopped to catch his breath, and then went on. "You can get things to eat from Mr. Beetles, the butcher, and Mr. Bunnyman, the baker, too, if you like eating bread or cream buns. Maybe you'll even be able to go to the circus." Oscar chatted on, and the young birds listened with opened beaks. "It's time to stop this nonsense now," interrupted the big eagle suddenly, and he beat his wings impatiently. "Your mother isn't back. She can't have found anything to eat. I'm hungry. Let's get this over now." "No, no," cried Oscar in terror. "She's sure to come soon. It's early yet." The big bird shook his head. "Let him go on with his stories." The young ones pleaded again. "Wait a bit longer. It's such fun. Listening to what he tells. You haven't ever brought such a funny animal back to the nest before. Mamma will be pleased, too, when she sees the Dachshund." "She'll be more pleased if you have had a good meal," grumbled their father. Oscar went on telling them about his journey, and then he gave an account of how he had always played with his master. Willie at home in Seven Towers, and where they had gone for their walks together. "Human beings must be odd creatures," said one of the young birds. "They give you food to eat. so that you will grow big and fat, don't they? And then they don't eat you afterwards." On they chatted, without their noticing it, even drew on. "That's enough now," said the big eagle. "Set to and eat him up." "Where's Mamma?" cried the young ones. "She's sure to bring us something else." "I don't know," said their father. "She ought to have been here long ago. I don't know what can be wrong." "Something must have happened to her," said Oscar. "If someone doesn't get home at the right time, then it's usually because something has happened. You ought to fly off and look for her. I may be able to help you." "How could you help me when you can't even help yourself?" sneered the big bird. With a strong flap of his wings, he swung himself up into the air and soared down into the valley. The sun was going down behind the mountains by the time he returned to the nest at last. "Oh, what fun we've been having!" cried the eaglets. Their father perched silently on the edge of the nest and hung his head. "I haven't been having fun at all," he said after a while. "I know now why your mother didn't come back for such a long time. I have seen her. She's caught in a trap. She is on the other side of Fir Tree Alp, where the cow pastures end, caught by both feet in a steel trap, and she can't fly away." "Didn't you get her out?" cried one of the young ones, and they all began to cry loudly. "Don't be so stupid," scolded her father. "If I could open the trap, I would have done." "Oh, Papa, get Mamma out," all the little eaglets cried. "Papa, you must get her out of the trap. You mustn't let Mamma die." Then the big bird grew angry. "It's all this Dachshund's fault," he stormed. "Before he came, everything was all right, and none of us ever fell into traps. We will divide him up quickly, then he'll be out of the way. I'll take half of him down to your mother, and see if I can't find some way to help her after all." He went over to Oscar and aimed his sharp, hooked beak at his throat. Like a flash, Oscar sprang to one side. "Wait," he cried. "That doesn't make sense. I can't help your wife being caught in a trap, but if you take me down there, I might be able to get her out of it." The big eagle stared at him. "How could you get her out?" he cried. "I tried myself, and you are much smaller and weaker than I am. I know what your game is. If I take you down to the pastures, then you'll just run away." "I promise I won't do that," said Oscar, "and I don't break my promises. If we can't open the trap between us, then I'll fetch the herdsman. He'll help us, I'm sure." "Yes, do," cried the eaglets all at once. "He has caught a burglar already, so he'll be able to get Mamma out of the trap all right. But afterwards you must let me go," said Oscar. "Agreed." He held out one paw to the father eagle. The eagle shook it in his claw. "Agreed," he said. "Right, then off we go," cried Oscar. The big eagle started to pick him up again in his claws, by the scruff of his neck. "No, not like that," Oscar said. "That hurts. I'd rather ride on your back." Oscar said goodbye to the little eaglets. "Come and see me when you can fly," he said, and climbed upon their father's back. "1, 2, 3, go!" he cried. The eagle beat his wings powerfully, and off they flew through the air. They swept high over the pastures. "The men are doing the milking now," the eagle told Oscar. "We must hurry. After that, they go to inspect the traps, and then it will be too late. Hold on tightly." He dived down like a stone towards the ground. Oscar could hardly breathe, and the speed almost tore him from his perch. But it was not long before the eagle slowed up, gave a couple of short, sharp flaps with his wings, and landed on the ground. Oscar jumped off. He could hardly believe it. He was standing on the ground again. He rushed excitedly round the eagle a few times, barking happily. Then he saw the mother eagle at the foot of a rock face. She was lying on the ground, as if she were dead. "I'm back again," the father called out to her. "We've come to get you out of the trap. I have brought someone else with me." She raised her head and beat her wings, but she could not stand up. Oscar worked out how to open the trap. He had seen one of these things once before, when he had gone for a walk in the woods with Willie. Willie had freed a young deer from the trap. "You see," he said to the father eagle, "there are two bits of steel, with the legs caught in between them. We must pull the two bits of steel apart. That's the only way. You hold on there with your beak, and I'll pull the other side with my teeth." They tried this. They pulled and tugged for all they were worth, and at last the mother eagle was able to pull her feet out. "Oh, my leg," she groaned. "I think it's broken." She tried to stand up, but she only fell over on the ground. Oscar had a good look at her leg. It had been quite badly torn by the steel, and red blood was dripping down over her foot. "No, it isn't broken," he said, "but your leg is quite badly hurt. That ought to be bandaged up, or all your blood will run out." Oh, if only Mr. Oatmeal the vet were here now! Then Oscar had an idea. "Listen," he said, "I don't need the bandage on my tail any more. I can soon have a good rest with Alex and Lisa in the pastures. Mr. Eagle, will you untie the bandage with your beak and unwind it? Only please be careful." The father eagle did as the Dachshund had asked. Then Oscar wound the bandage round the mother eagle's bad leg. She tried very cautiously to stand up. "Yes, that's much better now," she said. The leg held firm, and no bones were broken. "Do come back to the nest with us now," the mother eagle said, turning to the Dachshund. "Tomorrow I'll catch you something specially good to eat. What do you like best, a hare, or a little mountain goat, or a marmot?" Oscar did not in the least want to go back to the eagle's nest. "Thank you very much, Miss Eagle," he said, "but I'd rather go down to the pastures now. I'm sure I shall find everything I need there. You had better hurry along too, you know. It will be dark in a minute, and your young ones might have fallen out of the nest." "Then we wish you a very good journey," said the father eagle. "If ever you would like to pay us another visit, just come over to the foot of the precipice there and bark loudly. Then we will come and fetch you. You needn't worry. I shan't eat you." "Give my love to your young ones," called Oscar, "and in the future why don't you leave the little sheep and goats in the mountain pastures in peace? Then the people up here wouldn't set any more traps." Oscar watched as the two big eagles flew into the air, and then he ran down between the rocks and stones toward the mountain pastures. Chapter 11. Lisa and the Basket. It was growing fairly dark by now, but the path down to the pastures was not hard to find. Oscar could hear the sound of distant cowbells, and soon he saw the 3 low huts in the middle of the meadows. Oscar went up to one of the huts to knock at the door. Just then the herdsman came along, carrying a big pail of milk. "Good evening, Alex," said Oscar. The amazed herdsman put the pail down on the ground with such a bump that the milk slopped over. "Where did you spring from?" he asked. "I thought you must have been killed falling off the overhead railway. I found only the empty box after the storm. Didn't the storm throw you out then?" Oscar shook his head. "I didn't know whether you would come back," he said, "so I flew away through the air." "Flew through the air?" cried Alex. "Don't pull my leg. You're not a balloon, and you're not a bird, to go flying through the air." "Yes, I really did fly," said Oscar. "I'll tell you about it, but just at the moment I'm dying for something to eat and drink." The herdsman filled a big bowl with fresh milk, still warm from the cow. Oscar drank and drank, and did not stop until the whole bowlful had gone. "What shall I get you to eat now?" asked the herdsman. Oscar shook his head. "I'm going to see Lisa first," he said. They went out to the cow stalls together, and there lay Lisa on the straw at the end of a whole row of brown and black and brindled cows. "Lisa, Lisa," cried Oscar, tears of joy rolling down her cheeks. "I've found you at last." Lisa turned her head and stopped chewing for a minute. "Well, look who's here," she said. "Surely you can't be Oscar, who jumped out of the railway truck." "That's just who I am," said the Dachshund, "and I've been looking for you for ages. You do know, don't you, where I left my collar, my red collar?" "Yes, your collar," said Lisa. "I did see it." She went on chewing her cud. "Oh, please tell me quickly, where is it?" asked Oscar. "Have you got it here?" "What's the great hurry?" asked the cow. "You won't be able to get it back today, and where it is by now I can't say, but will tell you what I saw." The other cows were turning their heads to have a look too. "That's the Dachshund, Oscar, who came with us in the train," they told one another. "Well, now your collar," Lisa began again, and stood up slowly. "I saw the collar on the floor of the truck, but not until after you had jumped out. I felt sure you must have broken your neck or else fallen underneath the wheels. Fancy jumping out of a moving train!" "But the collar, who took the collar?" pleaded Oscar. "That was when we got to Upchurch," Lisa went on. "The guard opened our truck and we got out. Then I told the guard, 'There is a collar left behind in the truck. It belongs to a Dachshund.' He got in with us, and then he jumped out of the train. He may come and ask for his collar back." Then he took it out and gave it to another man, who had a big red cap on his head. "That was the station master," cried Oscar. "What did he do with the collar?" "I don't know," said Lisa. "He muttered something and then went away with it. I didn't see any more." "The station master. Oh dear, the station master. That couldn't be worse," sighed Oscar. "He's sure to know that I went on the train without paying. If he sees me, he'll lock me up, or take me to the police." Lisa didn't know what to say. "Oh dear, that's not so good," she said. Then she turned to the herdsman and asked him, "What do you think?" Alex had been listening quietly. "Every station has a lost property office," he said. "That's where people take everything that has been lost or left behind. Anyone who has lost anything can go and claim it from the lost property office. The collar must be there. Why shouldn't they give it back to you?" "Do you really think they will give it to me?" asked Oscar. "Yes, of course they will," Alex replied. "Now at least I know where to look," said Oscar. "Thank you very much indeed, Lisa. It's a good thing I came up to Fir Tree Alp." They made Oscar tell them what had happened when he jumped out of the train and suddenly noticed that his collar was missing. Then he recounted the story of the children in the train and of the cleaner, and all the rest of his adventures. The cows liked the bit about Oscar catching the burglars best of all. When he told how he had nearly fallen off the overhead railway into the ravine, and how the eagle had carried him off to his nest, the cows lay as quiet as mice, and even forgot to chew their cud. "That's enough for now," cried the herdsman at last. "The cows must get some sleep, or they won't give any milk tomorrow. And you, Oscar, come over to the hut with me." Oscar said good night to the cows, and then he went over to the mountain hut with Alex. The herdsman warmed up some soup for him, and brought him some bread, sausage, and cheese. "Oh, Oscar," he said, when the Dachshund had eaten all he wanted, "I'm in dreadful trouble too." "You mean because of your basket?" asked Oscar. "I'm awfully sorry it fell out of the overhead railway box. The box rocked about so hard in the storm that I couldn't hold onto the basket any longer, so it slid farther and farther out, and then it fell into the ravine." Alex gave a deep sigh. "Was it broken then?" asked Oscar. "It's lost, gone," groaned the herdsman. "The head herdsman says it's all my fault. I should have taken better care. You see, there were a lot of things in the basket that belonged to the head herdsman, and not only that, but all my own money was in it as well, all I had saved up. I spent the whole afternoon looking for it in the ravine, but it was no good. I couldn't find anything." "It shouldn't be all that hard," Oscar comforted him. "I'll help you with pleasure. Perhaps we can find it between us." "I'm afraid it won't ever be found again," answered the herdsman sadly. "The ravine is very deep, and no one can tell how far the wind carried the basket in the storm. It may have fallen into the stream, and the water may have carried it far away by now." Oscar did not give up hope so easily. "In the morning we'll go and have another look," he said. "I'm sure we shall be lucky." After that they lay down and went to sleep. Next morning Oscar set out very early with Alex to search for the lost basket. Hour after hour they climbed up and down the steep slopes, and through the deep clefts in the rocks. They could not find a thing. At last, after lunchtime, Oscar barked loudly. The herdsman came running up. Far below them, at the foot of a high precipice, Oscar had spied the basket. "I was afraid of that," said Alex sadly. "No one could climb down there. Anyone who tried would never get up alive again." Oscar was not defeated yet. "Tie the rope round my middle and let me down," he said. "Then I will tie the basket to the bottom end, and you can pull me and the basket up again together." The rope was far too short. Oscar stopped in mid-air, only halfway down, and wriggle and kick as he might, he could not get any lower. Alex had to pull him up again. "It's no use," he said in despair. "The basket is gone, and all my money with it. What shall I do now?" Oscar put his head on the herdsman's knee. "That is almost worse than losing your collar," he said sadly. Then suddenly he jumped up. "I've got it," he cried. The eagle can get the basket." The words were hardly out of Oscar's mouth before he went running off. He scrambled out of the ravine, ran across the pastures, and on up the mountain to the great precipice. The eagle's nest was up there. Oscar started, barking as loudly as he could. It was not long before the father eagle came flying down. "There you are again. We are very glad to see you," he said. "Will you get straight on my back and fly up to the nest with me? Or would you like to go for a little ride?" "I don't want to come up to the nest or to go for a ride. Thank you," said Oscar. "I have a very special request. Yesterday the herdsman's basket fell out of the overhead railway box into the ravine when the wind was blowing so hard. It is at the bottom of a high cliff, and no one can climb down to it. I thought you might be very kind and bring the basket up for us. You are the only one who can help." The eagle's feathers bristled angrily. "I don't like having anything to do with the herdsman," he said after a while, "but since it's you who's asking, I will help you." Oscar wanted to explain to the eagle exactly where the basket lay, but the bird flew straight up into the air again, calling down, "Do you think that we eagles are blind? I saw the basket yesterday. I will bring it up to the pastures. I'll put it where the cable ends." Oscar trotted contentedly back to the pastures and reached the overhead railway just as the eagle came flying down with the basket. The great bird put it down beside the cable and flew up in the air again. "Goodbye, Oscar," he called down. "I must hurry." The young ones are going to learn how to fly today. Come again soon. Oscar was glad everything had turned out so well. Alex was most delighted of all, at having his basket and his money back again. Luckily the basket had not been damaged by the fall. "Your Master Willie can be really very proud of you," he said. "I'm quite certain you will find your collar too, and get back home to your master very soon."